Hey guys, it's Alton here. Excited about sharing one of our discipleship tools with you. If you've never seen one of these, I would tell you where you're at. There's multiple videos here that will take you through some of the discipleship tools that we use. To me, this is my own personal opinion. What we're going to go through today is probably one of our most fundamental. I'm going to tell you it's between one and two of these that I think that are the primary things that you've got to get for us to take real steps forward in relationship to living out what God's really entrusted to us. And so we're going to go through a thing called covenant and kingdom today. And we're going to talk about the two different styles of relationships that we have with the Lord. And so we're going to be using the triangle as our primary shape. And again, we use the triangle in multiple locations, but it's not meant to confuse you. It's a simple tool that's used repeatedly because there's this rhythm to a triangle. It's kind of nice and easy to understand. But so when we talk about covenant and kingdom, the first relationship that we're going to talk about is that first relationship with the Lord, our covenant relationship. And that covenant is tied up in this idea of a relationship. You know, there's a nature, not a contract, but there's this relationship that we enter into the Lord. And what's beautiful about this is in the New Testament, it talks about how a new covenant has been made with us. The Old Testament covenant between God and man and the New Testament covenant between God and man is that it gets even better, actually. We have a better connection than the guys who were in the Old Testament, because we're told that not only can we know who the Lord is, not only can we experience the love and forgiveness of Him, but He comes to take residence in us. And when we talk about covenant relationship with God, we primarily talk about the idea that He plays a role of a father. And so out of that place, out of that covenant relationship, we're given this thing called an identity, because we're called, His sons, His daughters. The beloved is my favorite word to recognize that's my identity. And out of that place, we talk about that because we're in covenant with one another, there should be a desire to walk in obedience, right? That's the nature that He's my Father in heaven, and as His Son, and understanding who I am in covenant relationship with Him. Out of that place, there's a nature to want to obey. Now, here's the problem: most of us who have a sense or an understanding, we tend to do this backwards. And what we end up doing is that we say, "Hey, if He's saying He's willing to be my Father, then what I have to do is to obey. And if I obey the Father, and then He'll give me His identity. Then He'll be willing to call me His son, His daughter. Then I'll be in harmony with Him. If I do this, then I get this." Now, here's the problem. I think most often when we do that, what we think obedience is about is this word right here, no. We think if we say no to enough things, if we don't do the do not do list, that somehow we'll be able to be called His sons and daughters. Now, here's the problem with this. When we function that way, then the nature of this relationship and our identity hangs in the balance all the time. That means this comes and goes. That being His son or daughter comes and goes. Now, here's the problem with that. We understand that idea of sonship or daughtership, that never changes. In your family, you get given a last name, right? And you're called a son or a daughter. It's just given to you. And so this is us trying to earn it, and earning something. Ready? Think about this. Trying to earn something that's already been given to you makes no sense. And trying to earn something, ready, that you can't afford, that you couldn't buy, that you couldn't work for with all of your lifetime added up. It's a never-ending battle. And that's what the enemy wants you to believe, that if you'll obey enough, and when you don't, he'll accuse you for it, that you can't be a son or daughter. But that's not what the Father says. The Father says that you are my beloved. I no longer call you servants. I call you sons and daughters. You're part of my family. And then out of this place, I learned to walk in obedience, not because there's this list of no's. Actually, obedience in the kingdom of God is about this word. It's about yes. It's about learning how to say yes to the Father and the invitation that He creates. In the Garden of Eden, there was one no that God asked them to make, but They didn't focus on all the yeses of everything else that they could do and participate in the kingdom. And so here we are. When we focus on this thinking that earns us something, we miss out. Because the yeses that God has for us, the yeses that he's inviting us into over and over and over again, is the life that we're seeking, the life that we're wanting. And this is our relationship focus of how we see the Father. Now, the second part of this is called our kingdom relationship. Now, in the kingdom, we primarily see God as the king. And as his role as the king, one of the things that we understand is that we're given this thing called authority. And with this authority, we're allowed to exercise the power of the kingdom of God. Now, I know there's going to be some people that words, even like authority, is going to be difficult to understand because they've seen it abused. They've seen authority taken advantage of, that it's a right for someone else to gain something that you can't have. And that's not what the kingdom of God is about. That the authority that we're given is that we might be able to serve the world, that we might be able to love the world. And so, understanding that as the king gives us authority because of our identity, is that then and in that moment we can exercise the power of God. Now, I love this illustration. I was having a conversation with a group of guys that I'm discipling, and I asked if you understood, if you understood your identity and relationship to your Father, how would that change the way that you best represent him in the kingdom? And he had this great illustration. He goes, it'd be like the kid whose mom or dad owned the store. And as their son or daughter, you're allowed to go places in the store that nobody else can. You can go behind the counter. You can go in the stock room. You can look underneath the counter. You can open up the cash register. You can do all kinds of stuff. And it doesn't mean you have the opportunity to just do whatever you want. It means that you get access that nobody else does. And you don't have to fear walking around the counter. You don't have to ask the question, can I be a part of it? And if we knew this, if we understood who we were, when it comes to our responsibility in the kingdom, relationship and responsibility, when it comes to this, then we would begin to understand what we're called into, what we're invited into. And when I understand who my Father is and who he says I am as his son, when I accept this gift, this thing that I've already been given, something that's established before the beginning of time, is I can learn to understand that I have authority in the kingdom of God. Not authority to oppress, but authority to free, to heal, to help, and bring the resources of heaven into a broken world. And when I say yes in a level of obedience, that's when the power of God gets released. Let me ask you a question. Ready? The invitation Jesus says is this, to go lay hands on the sick so they might be healed. Now, if you ask me, that's a level of yes. Like, yes, Lord, I'll go do that. Or the most acceptable form of religion in James 1:27, it says this, is that to care for the widow, the orphan, and to live a holy life. Now, let me ask you a question. If I'm willing to say yes, that I'll meet the needs of an orphan, do you think the power of God gets released in their life? I would tell you yes. Yes, it does. And that's how it gets released, when we say yes to what God's inviting us into. So the challenge is this. As we look at our covenant and our kingdom relationship to God, some of us will gravitate towards one of these two things, the idea of a responsibility within the kingdom or a relationship in the kingdom of God. But it's both. It's a both and. Now, hopefully you'll take this, and what I want you to do is ask yourself some questions. It's like, hey, do I tend to work this triangle backwards? Do I see obedience as a yes or a no? Do you understand that if you have a proper understanding of who you are in relationship to who God is, that you do actually have authority? You have authority in the kingdom of God to exercise his power. But these all take a level of trust and confidence in who God really is. and what He wants to do in us and through us.